Hello and welcome to the Tips with Toni podcast. I'm Toni Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm very excited for you to hear this next interview. I have virtually in front of me William Hornby. He is a men eating disorder recovery advocate. His story is incredible. We just took a few minutes to chat before getting on here to record, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from him. He'll let you know a little bit more, but I just know even in my work as a dietitian, helping people who struggle with eating disorder or disordered eating habits, unfortunately, there's not a lot of resources out there for men. So William's going to talk a lot about, where you can maybe get some resources or what he's found and what's helped him recover in his journey. And I'm super excited. So anyways, William, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. So the first question I always ask my guests is to introduce themselves by sharing who they are, what they do, and most importantly, why they do what they do.
Of course. So let's get into it. So I'm William Hornby. I am mainly on TikTok as a male eating disorder recovery advocate. I also have an Instagram presence, and this is very new for me being online, talking about all of this. I started taking recovery seriously about 8 months ago in the pandemic. Um, and I developed an eating disorder about a decade ago. So this is something I've been struggling with for a long time, but did not really identify it as a serious struggle for many reasons, primary among them being that I am a guy and that eating disorders can't be a thing that guys actually have. But fun fact, they can. Um, I got diagnosed with an eating disorder about 2 years ago when I went to my dietitian at my university, and I was looking for advice on how to eat more nutritiously as a vegetarian, which was a restriction, an unnecessary restriction, I might add, that I was placing on myself at the time that I told myself was for the environment, but really was just for my eating disorder. Um, and she directed me to a therapist that she knew specialized in eating disorder recovery. And I did a lot of work with that therapist that had nothing to do with eating disorders for a while as background work, really, to me getting comfortable enough to address the eating disorder that I did, in fact, have. Um, and I really started to take it seriously around June 2020. Um, and it was really hard for me, as it is for anyone who decides to pursue recovery. But one particular aspect of recovery that was particularly hard was not having any guys in the social media sphere that were openly talking about being in recovery. Under any of the eating disorder recovery hashtags, like all of the content almost exclusively is women or non-binary people talking about their experiences with eating disorders, and a very significant amount of the people who have eating disorders are men, but it's not discussed, it's not talked about, and certainly not put on social media. So I really needed a guy to be talking about it, or even like a nonprofit or a website where I could get resources for men with eating disorders, but there was just nothing to be found. But nevertheless, I I've had a pretty smooth and successful recovery. I'm still in recovery, but I got to a good place in my recovery, and I in October started carving pumpkins on TikTok. I gained like 13,000 followers doing that, and then pumpkins went out of season. It wasn't October anymore. I was like, I have this platform. What am I going to do with it? And I was like, well, I could be the eating disorder recovery advocate that I needed but didn't have. So I decided
Amazing.
to do that. So here I am. The platform has grown really fast.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm thrilled to have it and to be able to help uh, guys and masculine presenting non-binary people and trans men in particular who often feel gender dysphoria related to an eating disorder developed pre-coming out as a trans man. I'm happy to be that guy that they need to see represented who is going through recovery. So,
Well, thank you for going first. There needs to be at least one person, and you were the brave one to go before there was really anybody before you, showing that. I think it's always easy to do it when someone else is doing it, right? But to be the first person to put yourself out there. And also, too, the fact that you're just recently in recovery, has that triggered you at all? Or do you feel like it's only made you recover faster? Like, I'm curious, I feel like that can be a little dangerous.
it is a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, I get a lot of triggering comments every day. My
I'm
comments
sure.
are
Right?
are a mess, and I also I go live often on TikTok. And I'll eat meals with people. I do this maybe once a day.
I love that.
Um, and like, it can be a really loving, positive experience. And most of the people who come on are absolutely wonderful. And I
Yeah.
think this really lovely community of people who consistently show up to these lives. I know about their lives. It's nice. Um, but also like I I'm suddenly a public figure in a way I never really realistically expected to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's a constant swarm of contents, and some of them can be triggering.
Right.
And sometimes I just have to like delete the app off of my phone and go,
Mm-hmm.
okay, time to go on a hike in the woods or read a book, and pretend that none of this is happening.
That's a really great tip, because I think what a lot of people probably struggle with, whether they have a social media platform and they're finally putting themselves out there, whether they're a leader in the space, or just if they're in their daily lives and maybe a family member comments on their food or something, like we're constantly like we're going to get triggered, right? Like you can't avoid getting triggered. And I think what you just described is having tools in place to help deal with when those triggers happen. So you don't want to anticipate them, be anxious that they're coming. But the reality is, especially TikTok, where I'm sorry, but it's so polarizing. It's just like there's a ton of
Uh,
trolls, and then there's like, I love TikTok for those amazing individuals, those inspiring individuals, the fun, the creativeness. Like it's like the first social media platform that I genuinely really enjoy. But then like you see, then it's like any social media platform, you just see people and these comments, and it's like, where is this coming from? And like, how is that helpful? And but I think what you just described is a great way to know that you're going to get triggered, especially I think you're always going to be in recovery. So, but it's new for you, right? So a lot of this is new, and the new kind of platform and everything, but you're recognizing that it's okay to take a step back. And just because you get triggered doesn't mean you need to respond and engage. If anything, like disengaging is often what I'm hearing you say is like the best thing to handle that.
and I do like to believe that even though I might always be in recovery, that like there is a point where you can consider yourself, almost fully recovered.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's always something you're going to have to monitor.
Freedom, and
Hmm.
like you might have like a little setback occasionally, but
Right.
I ideally in recovery, it's not this constant battle, especially
Right.
once you put all of these coping mechanisms and strategies in place. Like it's something that like you can brush off of your shoulder, hopefully, at that
Definitely.
point. And so that is the
Definitely.
goal, but yeah, you're right. I'm currently still in recovery.
Yeah, but you're obviously doing really well to be able to kind of show up daily and be there for people, who are also struggling. So that's really powerful.
Yeah. Also,
Um,
sorry, one other thing
yeah.
is that I am a double major in school. I'm doing 5 years. I'm a professional actor. I've worked professionally as an actor. I'm getting a BFA in musical theater and a BBA in business management. And so I just want to preface that all of the knowledge that I have on this is based on reading I've done on intuitive eating and diet culture and its toxicity. And like my idea is that I am redistributing the resources
Right.
that I am lucky enough to have. I'm lucky enough
Right.
to have access to a dietitian. I'm lucky enough to have access to therapy because I have healthcare.
Right.
And that is a privilege. And so I am trying to pass those resources down through TikTok. But I
Yeah.
don't have any professional training in this topic. And I just
Thank you.
say that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think that that's okay as long as you don't pretend to have that. And I'm glad that you disclosed that, but I think what you're just sharing is your own experience and what you've learned and what you wish you had. And that's very powerful. One thing that we were talking about offline that I think we should bring up here is that you were saying, like, when you were looking up like the signs or symptoms to an eating disorder and when to get help, like you would read, just from what you've learned in like middle school. And I too remember learning in middle school where we would learn about anorexia and bulimia as like the only eating disorders, and only seeing them on the place of like that the person was like near death, or it was like a
Yeah.
constant, like a daily experience of like binging and purging. And sometimes that's not always the case, right? But also you can binge and not purge. I mean, there's just so many other eating disorders. It doesn't just stop there. And also at that point, like that is like really, really far down the line. Another thing you mentioned was kind of like reading and noticing, like, one of the signs was, potentially is like not getting your period. Well, as a male, or someone, with that, like that might not apply to you, right?
Yeah.
And so, like looking back, because I know you reached out and you got help, but you mentioned that you've been struggling with an eating disorder since you were like 10. You said the past 10 years or so, right? So looking back, like what were the signs and symptoms for you, or what should people be looking out for before it gets too late?
I mean, so it started in diet culture. It started growing up around diet culture. It started from comments from friends and family
Hmm.
as a child. Um, like I started eating low carb when I was like 13, 12. Like I
Why? Tell
really
me why. Like, was that someone made a
because
comment you wanted to?
picked up from watching diet culture around me
Hmm.
that like for some reason bread was bad. So I just wasn't going to eat bread anymore. I didn't
Right.
like restore my idea of bread as like a positive thing until like now.
Hmm.
So like I grew up around diet culture, and that was a huge part of what set all of this into motion.
Hmm.
Um, and I have definitely had a more like my eating disorder has shown itself in a more restrictive way in the past. But like the current or the most recent presentation of my eating disorder was, a non-specified diagnosis of like a binge restrict cycle
Hmm.
where you binge at night and then you feel bad for binging at night and then you restrict for the rest of the next day until you get to the nighttime and you feel this extreme hunger and then you end up binging again, and it never
Right.
stops unless you start eating consistently and trying to restore your body's natural hunger and cravings.
Hmm.
um, and um, there's a lot of uh, competition with eating disorders, with this constant like I'm doing worse than you, or like, oh, you're eating this much, well I am eating this much, I'm only eating this much, so what I'm going through is more serious. And it
Mm.
doesn't necessarily have to be said by like that, but if you see
Right.
someone share specific information about what they're going through,
Hmm.
one of the things I say in my lives is please don't share any numbers. I actually went through and filtered, like in the live comment filters,
Oh, I
I
didn't do that.
like put like the numbers like 200 through like 1900. Like I just restricted them so that nobody can comment anything.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, I didn't either, but people
Wow.
kept doing it, and I had to find a solution.
That's amazing. That is great.
um, so yeah, Sorry, you asked a lot.
No, but sorry, but what you're saying I think is good, because what you're saying is that, like, what my question was, like, what signs and symptoms did you have that weren't the too extreme, that you maybe have been like
Yeah,
identifying, like, or someone should get help, and then you were going on to say that, like, the comparison to others, or to what you see on, like,
yeah,
what you were
for-
taught, like, you can't compare to other people, because then you're going to always find somebody that's doing a little bit, quote unquote, worse than you, or maybe they binge more than you, or or they binge and purge and you just binge, so therefore you
people,
think it's not as serious.
people often say, I'm not sick enough. But the thing about the phrase, I'm not sick enough, is that you are saying you're sick. You're just not
Yeah.
sick enough. We
Yeah.
treat a deep cut, and we also treat paper cuts. You put a band-aid on a paper,
Mm.
you put stitches in a deep cut,
Ooh.
and you treat both of those things. You wouldn't just let a paper cut get infected, because if it gets infected, it's a bigger problem.
Wow.
So
That was, can we, like, wait, hold on, pause. Okay, that was so good. Let's rewind a little bit, okay? I'm not sick enough, you're saying I'm sick, right?
yeah,
We treat a deep cut just like we would a paper cut. And if we ignore the paper cut, it will get infected and become a bigger cut.
yeah,
So heal all wounds, whether big or
yeah.
small.
Heal
Oh
all.
my God, that was the podcast. Let's just, like, that is no, but it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
No, so that's
Uh,
the big thing. People are like, I'm not sick enough to get help. I'm like, but you're acknowledging you're sick. You still need to address that sickness.
right. And that's in
Um,
both physical health and mental health,
absolutely,
and outside of eating disorders. Like, why
absolutely,
is it that we have to get to rock bottom to get help for anything?
certainly, yeah.
Why is that?
I
That's so
mean, if
frustrating.
capitalism is the answer, it's capitalism and
Oh
the
yeah, well, yeah, I mean that, yeah, but that, yeah, it's a little deeper than we
but like
can cover, but it's true. It is very true and very sad.
that's the answer there. But also, I wanted to say that for a long time, I was just like, well, I eat in a disordered way, and like I can't have an eating disorder because it doesn't qualify as anorexia or bulimia.
Well, that's another
But
issue too
but
with the
like
DSM. Yeah.
eating in a disordered way can just be eating in a disordered way. Like, sure, there are people who eat in a disordered way and they maybe aren't mentally affected by it at all. But
True.
there are other people, and I would
True.
say most people who eat in a disordered way, who feel very emotional about their disordered eating. And if there is an emotional component to your disordered eating, that is when it probably qualifies as an eating disorder.
Yeah. That's
Um,
a good point.
so
That's very true. I mean, and I say that to anyone, like, where, you can have two people eating the same exact meal, um, and it could be what you consider healthy or not healthy, doesn't matter. But the person, you don't know what that person's thinking. And depending on what that person's thinking, completely changes the whole story. Like, you could have somebody eating, and I hate to classify these foods, but just to help people get an understanding, you could literally have somebody sitting there and eating a cheeseburger. And so if you have this perception that cheeseburgers are bad, then you're automatically judging this person as eating unhealthy. Meanwhile, this person could be healed from an eating disorder, so proud, like, thinking about, like, I can't wait to eat this cheeseburger. I used to restrict this for what? For no reason. I love this.
yeah,
And, like, so excited about it. And that's, like, such a healthier thing than the person eating the salad that's, like, freaking out about the dressing, the calories in the dressing, that's, like, so stressed because they really wanted the cheeseburger, but they have to eat the salad because that's what's healthy. Like, so you could look at a picture and perceive it as one way, but until you know the mindset behind that person, it literally changes the whole story.
yeah.
And so that's exactly what you just shared, which is just so true. And yeah, unfortunately, in today's society, disordered eating is super normalized, and then also, like, disordered eating behaviors, just because of the way how busy we are, it's, like, very normal to skip meals. And for some people, they don't care. They skip a meal,
Well,
whatever. They eat later. They eat past fullness. It doesn't bother them. But for other people, it's so triggering, and it's a danger zone.
I would say that most of the disordered eating that occurs in society is actually an eating disorder because people are so emotionally attached to it.
Truth.
If you are in someone's comments, like lividly defending the way you eat your diet, like if you just are totally against eating carbs and like you are so passionate about that, it's not just your diet.
Yeah.
It's
That's the problem, right? We're so emotionally
yeah,
invested in this. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean and for men it presents mainly in like gym culture.
Mm.
Like gym culture in colleges and like sports culture.
Athletics.
I
Hmm.
mean, like for men, it's terrible, and it's so normalized, and
Yeah.
there's no there's so little awareness of it that when I had my first viral video about it, um, there were people in my comments saying I didn't even know that men could have eating disorders.
Sad.
It's so invisible, and it's invisible to men who are struggling with eating disorders, who just think, well, this is just something I have to hide. This is something I'm going through alone.
Right. Or like, how common is it for men to go through a cut phase and a bulk phase
Yeah,
and a
I
strength? Like,
that
that's very normal. Like, but
that is
is
disordered
that's
eating,
literally disordered
and
eating.
it's emotional. It's an
Yeah.
eating disorder.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. So, okay, so I'm glad that you brought this up because I did want to talk about men today. So, and then also too, maybe just not in, so maybe some advice that you have for men, but also gay men, because I think they're definitely not like, I mean, you could just, there's just so much more work that we can do in the, gay community, but
yeah.
like, what advice would you have for a man that is struggling, that maybe doesn't have the resources? Like, what are like the best next steps for them?
So what I would recommend to any man, including gay men who have eating disorders, which are super prevalent and normalized just because of the way the gay community operates. But to any man, if you are emotional about eating, if you are emotional about working out, if you are obsessed with your appearance, find a registered dietitian,
Hmm.
find a therapist who deals with body image and eating disorder recovery.
Yeah.
And I would argue to any man, but specifically gay men, that that you don't need your eating disorder in order to have sex appeal.
Mm.
You don't need your eating disorder in order um, to exist within society. It's a lot easier to be in recovery than it is to constantly be combating your hunger.
Mm.
Um, so
That's powerful.
that's what I would recommend to.
So they need so I think just having the awareness that you're not alone is number one.
For sure.
To
I mean, that's
yeah.
a huge part of it. And like also, if you feel comfortable, be open about being in recovery,
Hmm. Hmm.
because the more people see men in society be open about being in recovery, the more normalized we make it, the more we show that we actually have a presence and a willingness to heal,
Hmm.
the more research will be done by the medical community on how eating disorders specifically affect men.
Right. And I don't know if we mentioned it here or before we were recording, but 1 in 3 people who have eating disorders are men.
Yeah, 1 in 3
So
people who
yeah.
have eating disorders are men. 1/10 of eating disorder recovery patients are men.
Hmm.
And less than 1% of all eating disorder research is done exclusively on men.
It's crazy.
And
We need to do better.
the power of representation is
Yeah.
so important.
Well, yeah, because if they don't see that it's an issue or a problem, nobody's going to talk about it. They're
Exactly.
not going to do any
Yeah.
research behind it,
But
right?
also, if you don't see what you're going through represented, you're not going to feel like you can live openly.
Right. Right.
Like
Which is
that works for anything.
exactly.
Like if like arguably the presentation of gay men openly existing on Will and Grace and on Glee
Hmm.
had like were big pieces like in popular culture
Yeah.
that led to the legalization of gay marriage in 2015.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
that likely would not have happened without those social building blocks. I
Right.
watched Glee with my father, who is a conservative, That was the show that we watched together when I was in high school. And like, I think that part of the reason why it was easier for me to come out to him and why he took it easier was because we watched Glee together. We had watched like the Kurt and Blaine love story. And I say this because having representation normalizes things.
Right.
If we normalize things, they become less scary.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have been noticing a shift. We need to do 100% better. But like as you were talking about it, definitely more TV shows, and movies, it will show, gay couples, and it's definitely more normal. And I think that's why more people are coming out. Now, when it comes to eating disorders, it is coming up a little bit more. This Is Us. They showed a little bit, and now I'm like, oh God, people who watch This Is Us are gonna hate me right now because I'm forgetting their names. But I'm talking about the actor, the male actor in the show struggles with an eating disorder, but he doesn't realize it until like his now fiance, girlfriend, soon to be baby mama, whatever. Anyways, is open about her recovery and shares with him and says, when you say this stuff, it really triggers me, because he was in a movie and now he had a cut and he needs to like get super slim. And then he didn't realize until his wife, whatever you want to call her, basically was like, listen, like this triggers me. And like, I can't have conversations like this, for him to realize that, like, I think he just turned 40 in the show, 40 years old, that like, oh my gosh, like since I was in high school and because I was an athlete, right? Because I was an actor, because I was in these sports, and I was looked at, like he got hired for a role because of his six pack. Yeah. Like it's just like was so normal, but that was literally him having an eating disorder. So I say that to say that I think the more that shows put this in, Tiny Pretty Things on Netflix, I just told you about that before. It's really good. They're starting to show the male perspective of body dysmorphia and eating disorders. And I think the more, you're right, the more we can do that, then the more people are going to open up and realize like that this is worth talking about and the research needs to be done.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And also, sorry, just
no, go for it.
Maybe two other things onto that last question. If you're a gay man, delete Grindr. Grindr is an app that it's like Tinder, but it's a lot more dangerous. It's a lot like anyone can message anyone. It's mainly just a sea of torsos. And it's in sequence of like who's closest to you by feet.
Wait, stop. Are you serious?
I'm completely serious. This is like,
they don't show your face, or do they show your face?
I mean, you can show your face on it, but like, I mean, okay. Like mostly it's torsos or blank profiles. I mean, it's like, and you were taught, like the culture of it is like, hey, do you have any pictures of your body? Like, it's like that. It teaches most gay men from a young age, because also a lot of young gay men, there's not like an ID verification process. So a lot of like 13 through 17-year-olds get on this app that's made for people above 18 and pretend to be 18 and sleep with older men and get like essentially taught from a young age, groomed into this idea that their body is a currency, and that like that currency is the value, it like has value in that it can be traded for sex.
So damaging.
Yeah, and so that is another thing that really damaged me. I did not join Grindr until I was of age, but like it like being a part of that culture was really, really toxic and bad.
I mean, you could also argue that a lot of those dating apps,
I mean, yeah, this goes
because
dating apps.
A lot of the dating apps are really like, okay, do you like what you see?
No, that's the entire premise.
That's like the whole thing, right? And it's like just so what's the word? Shallow?
Absolutely. Like, no, it's shallow, and it's not inclusive of size, and it's also generally like when you're not inclusive of size, you're often not inclusive of race and height and like a myriad of other things. And the other thing is that I just want to say to trans men and non-binary mask presenting people that you're no less of an eating disorder patient or a person with an eating disorder because you have an eating disorder, and that plenty of men do go through that, and that you shouldn't feel like you are less of a man or mask presenting person because you have an eating disorder,
Right.
which a lot of trans men and mask presenting non-binary people do feel. They like their eating disorder voice is very loud, and it's a constant reminder to them, it feels like, that they are not actually the gender that they are, which is not the case. So those are the last
Yeah.
things I wanted to tag in.
No, but that's all really good stuff. And I mean, I can just see how complicated it can get, you know.
Yeah.
But I think the point is that regardless of who you associate yourself with, or who you believe that you are, no matter what, and no matter how deep or severe the eating disorder is, or even if it's kind of borderline, you should still get help.
Absolutely.
Because I think like what you just, I love that analogy with the wounds. I'm going to bring that up a lot. Definitely, that's going to be a new thing that I share. With patients, with clients, podcasts. I'm going to definitely talk about it on my platform today and tag you. But yeah, that was just really great because it's true. Like, why not get help now before it gets too deep?
Yeah.
And I think that, like you just said, although you can't really, like you worked with a therapist and a registered dietitian, something I believe in strongly and advocate for is if you have the availability or the ability to have that covered through insurance. You're in college, so this is great because a lot of people in college, often there will be like a dietitian or a therapist on staff that's pretty much included.
Yeah, I mean, college therapy is not great. I actually kind of got dismissed by my college therapist because like there's just not availability. It's college therapy is a band-aid on a like war wound. Like the mental health that exists on college campuses is like absolutely horrible. And so like when a huge like public mental health incident happens, colleges can be like, well, we have therapy available, but like they don't really. Like my dietitian that I have through my college is very accessible. I can meet with her every week.
Nice.
My therapist, you can only meet with them like I think a max of 8 times before you have to like either check out of therapy or move to a new therapist. And you can like only schedule like every 3 weeks.
Okay.
So like, but for college students who don't have resources, what I would recommend is reaching out to private practice therapists in your area. Ask them, like, do you know of any resources that are in this area that are for low income people? A lot of private practice therapists work on sliding scales, so they can adjust for your level of income. Also, people who are doing it for the right reasons and have a steady enough income from their other clients might be willing to do pro bono work for you. It all depends on like their motives and going into this kind of work. If they did it because they truly care, and they don't need the extra client money, they might be able to do it for a very reduced rate. There's also resources like BetterHelp. Like there are options.
Yeah, I think you have to just be open to it, and I do believe that you attract what you look for, basically. So it is a little annoying, like anything, to find the right fit, but you might get lucky. You might find someone that you kind of gel with right off the bat. Yeah, so just look. Just look and know that you can. How can people get in contact with you if they just have questions and maybe maybe they live near you or something like that?
Can get in contact with me mainly through my Instagram. I have a lot of unread, overwhelming.
I'm sure. Yeah, when you have a large following, it can get a little overwhelming.
But if you send me a message on Instagram, I will definitely see it and I will try to respond to you at some point.
Okay.
I'm gonna have a website soon, and hopefully that will, again.
Have you had any other men open up to you and tell you that they're struggling? I'm sure you have.
I've had so many men.
Which is great. So maybe one of them.
When a man reaches out to me in particular, I really make a special effort to talk to them because that's what I really needed.
Right.
Which is not to say that I'm like not answering the direct messages of women or non-binary people. But like when I see someone who is like male or mask presenting, I really try to make sure I do reach back out to them because I needed it really badly.
Right.
And I'm sure that they do too.
Right. Definitely. Well, you guys can also message me, you know that. I'm always available. tipswithtoni at gmail.com. You can email me or you could message me, but definitely at least let William know. He will get back to you. It just sounds like he's a little overwhelmed with getting back really quickly. So he will get back to you.
Like unavailable. Also, sorry, the best way to get in contact with me is to join my TikTok lives. I respond to everyone who.
So you go live daily you said?
I go live almost daily, yeah.
Wow. Okay, cool.
So the best way to do that is to go follow me on TikTok and to join those lives when I go live. I do specifically respond to people in those lives. And it's by far the best way to get in touch with me.
All right, cool. All right, well, I'll put both links in the show notes for Instagram and for TikTok. Is there anything else you wanted to go over or you wanted to talk about today before we wrapped up?
No, I think that is it. I don't think we need to talk about musical theater and dance all that much.
Oh yeah, we were gonna, if we had time, we were gonna talk about that. But I think in general,
I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of, just to kind of touch on that a bit, like when we talk about athletics, when you talk about musical theater, when you talk about dance, when you talk about acting, you could probably argue that changing the way that your body looks and doing it through disordered eating habits or behaviors is normal, but it's not normal, right? So the pressure is higher depending on maybe the area of your work.
Yeah, with musical theater and dance in particular, you really want to make sure that you're doing it for the art.
Yeah.
It can be hard to be in those careers, especially when you have teachers and casting directors and
well, yeah, because you're told to literally look a certain way. Yeah.
But just know that know that you're doing it for the art. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's true. Yeah, I know we can go on for this stuff for hours, but okay, so guys, if you're not following William, definitely follow him. I'm excited to go on some of your lives on TikTok. I think that's going to be great. I love that you eat with people because it can be so scary for some. So to have somebody to kind of be there with you, it's really nice. And to show them that it's okay to eat. I'm sure you eat a variety of different things. Like it's not like you eat the same thing every day, although I do, but that's not good or bad. It's just, I think that's great that you could kind of have those conversations with people.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, if you're not following William, definitely give him a follow. If you're not already subscribed to the Tips with Toni podcast, definitely hit that subscribe button. A new episode comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm Toni Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.